Have you ever had that really specific kind of exhaustion, like where it just feels like your entire life is, well, rattling?
Oh, yeah, like you're stuck inside this massive, complicated machine that's just vibrating slightly out of control.
Exactly. And, you can't find the off switch anywhere. And the more you try to grab onto all those shaking parts, like your finances or your career, your relationships, you just get more and more exhausted from like absorbing all that kinetic energy.
Right. It's this pervasive ambient anxiety. And I think most of us, we just interpret that rattling as some sort of personal failure, or, we just chalk it up to bad luck, or we assume it's just the baseline chaos of the modern world. Like we just accept that the friction is normal.
Right, which is wild. But welcome to today's deep dive, because our mission today is to, well, completely dismantle that assumption. We're getting into a piece of source material that is going to totally reframe how you view the world around you and, honestly, how you physically and psychologically operate within it.
Yeah, and the sources themselves are so fascinating. We're looking at an exchange between two figures who use the monikers Helios and the Mad Philosopher.
Which, I mean, right out of the gate establishes a very specific tone.
Totally. It implies a huge departure from, your standard conventional self-help terminology.
Absolutely. And what makes this deep dive so unusual today is the scope. We are not covering an entire book, like, at all. Helios and the Mad Philosopher are discussing an excerpt that covers literally just the very first page of a 200-page book.
Yeah.
It's called Mastering the Art of Making Things Happen. And our goal here is to take a concept that usually makes analytical people roll their eyes, the mystical, kind of heavily commodified law of attraction, and just strip away every single ounce of the fairy tale.
Which is such a necessary corrective, right? Because the law of attraction has been so thoroughly wrapped up in this sparkly, wishful thinking packaging over the last 20 years.
Oh, totally. The woo-woo stuff.
Right. And its original, more structural premise has just been entirely lost. It's been reduced to like a parlor trick of the mind.
Yeah, well, we are throwing out the parlor tricks today. Instead, we're going to look at this through the cold, unsentimental lens of structural integrity, physics, and, believe it or not, commercial plumbing.
Yes, plumbing. I love this part.
Right, because you really can't fix a rattling machine if you don't understand the physical medium it's actually operating inside of.
So before we get to the plumbing, let's talk about that environment.
Yeah, so the foundational premise established on page 1 of this text is this concept they call the universal sea of energy. And basically, the Mad Philosopher and Helios argue that the universe is not just, a vacuum filled with isolated, disconnected objects.
All right.
It's a highly reactive ocean of energy. And within this ocean, the human mind isn't just some passive observer trapped behind your skull. It actually functions as a literal transceiver.
Wait, a transceiver, so that implies two-way traffic, right?
So it transmits a signal out, and it receives a matching signal back. That kind of moves us away from psychology and straight into, well, what the source calls forensic engineering.
Right, and they refer to the first law of this as the tuning fork protocol. The physics example they use to illustrate it is just brilliantly grounded.
I really like this part.
Yeah, so imagine you're standing in a room full of various objects, right? And you strike a tuning fork specifically at 440 hertz. This unavoidable physical phenomenon just occurs. Every single object in that room that is structurally capable of vibrating at 440 hertz will automatically start to sing.
Wow.
Yeah, it will resonate without you ever even touching it.
And the objects don't, decide to sing.
No, not at all.
They are literally compelled to by the physical laws of resonance. Like, the sound waves travel through the air, acting as the medium, and they physically force matching structures to move in harmony.
Exactly. It's a purely mechanical operation.
Mm-hmm.
It's totally devoid of choice or morality. The energy transfers and the harmony is established.
Mm-hmm.
So if we map this onto the universal sea of energy, it just completely removes the mysticism from manifestation.
Right, because the frequency you emit through your focused attention, that is the tuning fork you are striking.
Yes.
And your reality, like your circumstances, the people around you, the opportunities that pop up, that's the room. And the room simply must resonate with whatever frequency you're broadcasting.
Precisely.
So it's less like casting a magic spell to get a sports car and much more like tuning a guitar to match an old radio signal. You're just matching physical frequency.
That's a great way to put it.
But, okay, if we are all walking, talking tuning forks, constantly emitting a frequency, I have to assume that ambient anxiety we talked about earlier happens when we emit, like, a highly destructive frequency.
Yeah, and this brings in the most unexpected and grounding analogy in the whole text. Helios, the author, actually reveals his background as a commercial plumber.
Which is so funny to me.
Right. He spent his whole life dealing with vibration and pressure and structural integrity in the physical world.
Yeah, and he has this incredibly memorable quote in the excerpt. He says, if a pump is vibrating at the wrong frequency, the whole building rattles.
Just think about a massive commercial skyscraper. You've got steel, concrete, glass. I mean, it is engineered to withstand literal hurricanes. But deep down in the basement, there's a water pump.
Right.
If the bearings in that pump are even slightly off-center, if it's vibrating at a destructive, asynchronous frequency, that vibration doesn't just stay in the basement.
It travels.
Exactly. It travels through the rigid pipes, into the drywall, straight up the elevator shafts. The entire massive structure starts to hum and shake, and over time joints weaken, and things actually start to fracture.
And people on the 50th floor are just looking around their office wondering why the walls are vibrating, completely unaware of the pump down in the basement.
Yes. And the source applies this directly to human existence. The reason your life feels like it's rattling, the reason there's constant friction in your career or chaos in your daily routine, is that your mind, which acts as your internal pump, is vibrating out of phase.
Okay, but if I'm a tuning fork, a wrong frequency isn't a literal bad pitch, right? It has to be a psychological state. Like walking into a negotiation convinced you are definitely going to be taken advantage of.
Right, exactly. And the Mad Philosopher provides very specific examples of these destructive cognitive frequencies. He points out the profound danger of vibrating at the frequency of, say, I am a tenant, or I am in debt, or I am waiting.
Oof. Okay, let's unpack the tenant frequency because this obviously goes way beyond just renting an apartment. It sounds like a fundamental worldview.
It is. A tenant worldview is one where authority is always externalized. If you walk around with the internal state of a tenant, you feel powerless.
Yeah.
You feel like you're perpetually at the mercy of landlords or corporate bosses or the economy or the government. You lack ownership over your own agency.
Yeah.
And that feeling of powerlessness, that is your 440 hertz. That is the exact fork you were striking.
And by the laws of acoustic physics we just talked about, the room has to sing back. So the universal sea of energy acting as the medium will find every circumstance, every difficult client, every bureaucratic nightmare that perfectly matches the frequency of powerlessness and just pull them right into your physical reality.
Yeah, it will go them right into resonance with you. And the debt frequency operates the exact same way. If you vibrate at I am in debt, you are transmitting a pure signal of lack. You are obsessing over what is missing. The environment, mathematically, has to reflect that lack back to you.
Man. But you know, the one that strikes me as the most insidious, though, is I am waiting.
Oh, absolutely.
Because society practically trains us to vibrate at the frequency of waiting. I mean, we wait for the weekend, we wait for the promotion, we wait for the right partner, we wait for retirement so we can finally relax.
It is the default state of the modern worker.
Yeah.
But think about it. If your internal transceiver is constantly broadcasting, I am waiting, the physical world literally cannot give you the thing you want.
Wow.
It can only give you more conditions that require you to wait because you are manifesting a state of perpetual delay. The moment the thing actually arrives, you would no longer be waiting, which would violate the frequency you are currently emitting.
That implies a massive, almost uncomfortable shift in perspective. Like if I am constantly stressed about money, and then my car transmission blows up, the universe isn't looking down and saying, you deserve this.
Yeah.
It is merely physically matching my debt frequency.
Yes, that is the absolute crux of the entire philosophy, and it leads straight into what the Mad Philosopher calls forensic spirituality.
See, forensic spirituality sounds like a total contradiction in terms because we usually associate spirituality with something soft, you know, ethereal and emotionally comforting, whereas forensics is cold, analytical, and strictly evidence-based.
Right, and it's a deliberate juxtaposition. It's meant to force you to rethink your entire relationship with reality. The most crucial takeaway from page 1 of this text is a concept that is honestly simultaneously terrifying and liberating. And it's this: the universe does not have an opinion about you.
Wait, it doesn't care if you're a good person who works hard.
Nope. It does not care if you have suffered. It doesn't care if you feel you have paid your dues and finally deserve a break. It has zero moral compass. It only has a structural response.
Wow. You know, this feels exactly like standing at the edge of a massive canyon.
Okay, yeah.
Like when you stand there and yell, I am miserable and broke, The canyon doesn't pause, analyze your life choices, feel empathy for your situation, and then send back a comforting breeze.
Exactly.
It doesn't judge you at all. It is just legally bound by the physics of acoustics and the shape of the rock walls to bounce the exact words miserable and broke right back into your ears.
That analogy captures the mechanics perfectly. The canyon is the universal sea of energy. Your shout is the internal tuning fork. And the returning echo is your physical reality.
And if you don't like the echo, getting angry at the Cameron is just a profound waste of time. I mean, you cannot negotiate with rock walls.
Right.
Complaining about your circumstances while maintaining the same internal frequency is like yelling into the canyon, hearing the miserable echo, and then yelling back, "Why are you saying that to me?"
Yeah. You just become trapped in an acoustic feedback loop of your own creation.
Yeah.
And forensic spirituality demands that you take total, unsentimental responsibility for that initial shout. Just as a forensic investigator can look at the shatter pattern of a glass window and calculate the exact trajectory and weight of the rock that broke it, you can look at the rattling circumstances of your life and forensically trace them back to the specific frequency your mind is broadcasting.
Man, that is intense. And that actually brings us to the practical application because honestly, this is where I need to push back a little bit.
Yeah.
If we accept this forensic view of reality, if we accept that we are the faulty pump rattling the building, how do we functionally fix it? Because the text outlines a process, starting with what Helios calls an audit.
Right, an audit, which is basically a rigorous examination of the books. But in this context, you are examining your internal output. To do this, the text says you actually must retreat into a secret room and firmly shut the door on what they call Caesar's world.
Okay, so Caesar's world represents the external reality, right? Like the loud, demanding physical world where rent is due, where your inbox is overflowing, where the news cycle is literally designed to induce panic. It's the realm of external authority.
Exactly. So to perform the audit, you have to mentally detach from Caesar's world. You have to build a cognitive boundary, this secret room, where all that external noise simply cannot dictate your internal state. And once you're in that quiet space, your objective is to strike a completely new tuning fork, the fork of ownership.
Which is where the text mentions the concept of holding a coin while in the secret room. And it's not a magical talisman, right?
Yeah.
From a forensic standpoint, it seems to be a psychological anchor. Like when you are sitting in that room and Caesar's world is just pounding on the door, when your amygdala is screaming about a past due bill, holding a literal or mental coin gives your brain a singular tactile point of focus. It serves as a fulcrum to break that cognitive loop of panic.
Yeah, it acts as a physical interruption to a psychological spiral. And the text is very explicit about what you do next. Helios says, you don't ask the universe for permission, because when you ask for permission or when you beg the universe for a favor, you are vibrating at the frequency of a subordinate.
Right. You are vibrating at lack. You are basically stating, I do not have this, please give it to me, which the canyon simply echoes back as continued lack.
Exactly. Instead, using that focus, you set the frequency of ownership. You embody the psychological and physiological state of already possessing the authority, the peace, or the outcome. And then, according to the protocol, you simply wait for the physical world to harmonize with that new structural output.
Okay, wait. Simply set the frequency is doing a massive amount of heavy lifting there.
Oh, absolutely.
Let's be realistic here. If my bank account is actually overdrawn, my biological survival instincts are fully engaged. I cannot just close my eyes, ignore a literal eviction notice, and functionally vibrate at wealth.
Right.
How does a human being actually bypass millions of years of evolutionary survival programming to strike this fork of ownership amidst real, actual chaos?
Look, it is arguably the most difficult task a human being can undertake, which is exactly why most people fail at it. But the Mad Philosopher addresses this difficulty with the final metaphor of the excerpt. He points out that your thoughts and your emotions are basically ripples in the universal sea.
Like throwing stones into a pond.
Exactly. Most people live their entire lives just indiscriminately throwing rocks into the water. They have a sudden fearful thought about the economy. That's a rock. They get angry at a rude driver. That's another rock. They spiral into panic about an upcoming presentation. That's a huge boulder. They're constantly throwing rocks, creating this chaotic, churning, turbulent surface. And then they stare at the messy surface of their lives and complain about how turbulent the water is.
They are reacting to every single stimulus Caesar's world presents. They're basically letting the rattling building dictate the vibration of the pump.
Precisely. The whole goal of the audit, the secret room in the coin, is to train yourself to stop throwing rocks.
Yeah.
You have to bypass the survival instinct by realizing that the panic is actually what is creating the danger. The text states that we are being taught how to become a hydraulic engineer.
A hydraulic engineer, another grounded mechanical profession. I love that.
Right. A hydraulic engineer understands pressure and flow and consistent force. They do not create chaotic splashes. The source material states the goal explicitly. Start emitting a steady, sovereign pulse.
A steady, sovereign pulse. Wow, that contrast is incredibly vivid. I mean, it is the difference between a panicked, flailing splash in the water and a precise, intentional sonar ping.
Ooh, yeah.
Right. A flailing splash just creates messy waves that crash into each other, creating totally unpredictable turbulence. But a sonar ping is rhythmic. It is controlled. It travels cleanly through the medium, mapping the world and returning clear information.
That is exactly it. So applying this to the reality of an overdrawn bank account, it means recognizing the external reality without letting it alter your internal frequency. If you get a piece of bad news, the survival instinct obviously wants you to throw a rock of panic into your mental sea.
Right.
But the hydraulic engineer observes the bad news, retreats to the cognitive secret room, focuses on the anchor, and maintains the pulse.
You just keep the pump vibrating at the correct frequency of ownership, trusting the forensic law that the building will eventually stop rattling and harmonize with the new stable vibration. Like you use your internal pump to dictate the vibration of the building rather than the other way around.
You do it with the structural integrity of an engineer, not the hopeful wishing of a tenant. It requires an ironclad discipline to look at a terrifying external reality and flat out refuse to match its frequency.
It is staggering that all of this depth, this actionable, highly mechanical philosophy, was extracted from literally page 1 of this 200-page book. It makes you wonder what on earth is on page 2.
Yeah, as Helios mentions in the introduction, the truth isn't found in some breezy summary. It is found in the structural integrity of every single word. They describe the process of reading it as a high-pressure journey.
A high-pressure journey that demands total accountability. So, to distill our deep dive today, we have to stop viewing our lives as a series of random, chaotic events that we are just victimized by.
Right.
We are operating in a highly reactive universal sea of energy. We have to stop throwing rocks of reactive panic into that water. We need to conduct an unsentimental audit of our internal output, retreat into the secret room, shut the door on Caesar's world, and recalibrate the pump.
And you really must accept the forensic nature of the environment. The universe is impartial. It is merely echoing your structural state.
Strike the tuning fork of ownership. Emit that steady, sovereign pulse like a hydraulic engineer, and force the physical world to legally, physically harmonize with that new frequency.
It really is a profound reclamation of agency.
It truly is. As we conclude this deep dive, I want to bring us back to that initial feeling of ambient anxiety. If your life is rattling right now, you are the one holding the wrench. The pump is in your basement.
And as you step out of this conceptual secret room and back into the loud demands of Caesar's world, consider this. If the life you are living right now, the specific conflicts, the bank balances, the relationships, is simply the physical forensic echo of the tuning fork you struck yesterday, what exact frequency are you going to consciously strike the moment you take your headphones off today?